Due to technical difficulties, the beginning of this forum is not available. It began with a welcome by Marty Carlson from Lake of the Isles Lutheran Church urging everyone to vote, and a welcome by Courtney Kiernot from the Kenwood Neighborhood Organization thanking all the co-sponsors shown on the flyer. Omitted remarks of the moderator included the statements that the views expressed in the forum are solely those of the candidates and not of the co-sponsors or the League of Women Voters. Neither the League of Women Voters nor the co-sponsors endorse candidates or a political party. This was the second of 2 Ward 7 forums. The other was held on September 28th, and you can find a complete recording of it on the lwvmpls.org for voters page. We encourage you to view it to gain a broader understanding of the candidates' positions. In this video, the audio of the moderator's voice is not heard asking the first 4 questions. For your convenience, we will add a voice over those questions. Questions were both submitted by community members before the forum and collected during the forum. This recording now begins with the candidates' opening statement responses to the question, why are you running for the Ward 7 City Council seat, and what are your qualifications?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Graham. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the League, the neighborhood associations who collaborated, and the church. My wife Susie and I live west of Cedar Lake in Bryn Mawr, and we have for a little over 20 years. My career as a realtor for the last 25 years has been fantastic, and I own my own brokerage called Uptown Realty. Owning a business has taught me a lot about what it might be like to be on city council. During that same time, I've held a variety of leadership roles in the DFL party. I was the chair of this Senate district for about 10 years, and I presently sit on the state executive committee, which is basically the board of directors of the state party. I've worked on dozens of campaigns, and I've seen what good leadership looks like. This election is about the future of our city. Our city council is ideologically split, and the extreme left-leaning minority is attempting to build a majority. In politics, you are the company you keep. My opponent, Ms. Cashman, is supported by a group called Minneapolis for the Many, and most of the other candidates they support identify as socialists or democratic socialists. They've advocated for rent control, for defunding, or even abolishing our police, and other values that I find destructive to our city. Minneapolis for the Many wouldn't promote a candidate who disagrees with them. What's going on with violent crime in our city is not acceptable. We need a police force and a criminal justice system that puts safety back on our streets. I hope we talk about that a lot tonight because it's the #1 issue, I think, facing our city. What qualifies me to represent you on council is experience, judgment, and temperament. I'll be a steady hand on the tiller of our city. Thanks, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Katie Cashman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm running to serve you, Ward 7, on the Minneapolis City Council. Before I introduce myself, I want to acknowledge the indigenous history of the land we live on, the Dakota and the Anishinaabe people. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and all the neighborhood associations for organizing this event tonight. So again, my name is Katie Cashman. I'm running to serve you on the Minneapolis City Council. Minneapolis is my hometown. I grew up swimming in Cedar Lake, serving breakfast at Uptown Diner on the weekends. I have a deep appreciation for our community and the desire to give back and to build a brighter future for Minneapolis. Here in Minneapolis, we are facing deep challenges. We are facing a public safety system that is unreliable. We are facing a crisis of housing affordability. And we are facing small businesses in dire need of support following the COVID pandemic and following the social uprising of 2020. My vision for Ward 7 is for a safe, vibrant future for Ward 7. My background is working in public service. I've worked in public service for 10 years. I worked at the United Nations for several years, helping municipalities build strong transit and housing and innovative data-driven policies. I also fundraised for and built a community center with a nonprofit that I founded at the age of 25. I also started a global program for climate education that raised millions of dollars in public funding to deliver climate in our education system, including in our own Ward 7 elementary schools. Shout out to Emerson. I would like to include everyone in the coalition I'm building for City Council, and that does not include a PAC that had no bearing on endorsing me whatsoever. I have not coordinated with them at all. I'm not endorsed by the DSA and did not seek their endorsement. My coalition includes local labor unions, elected officials, women's groups, LGBTQ advocacy groups, and I invite you to be part of that group as we build a brighter future for Minneapolis. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? I won't be talking like Barry White, so just let me know. My statement starts like this. My father died about 20 years ago. Before he passed, he broke it down to me. He said, Ken, I need you to understand what the hood means. I'm like, I understand the hood. He said, Ken, you need to understand this hood. So I said, Dad, come on, let's bring it. He said, well, hey, there's 4 kinds of hood. First of all, it's childhood. Then you got sisterhood and brotherhood. And since you're a man, you need to understand what fatherhood is. I said, yeah, you're right. This makes so much sense. He said, once you build all that together, then you can create a neighborhood. This is what we are trying to do. All of us is trying to see your approval to be a neighborhood. It's always said, and you've been hearing this long time, it takes a village to raise a child. Our village has been broken. And why it's been broken? Because we are divided. And you know what? It's time for us to be connected. Why am I qualified for this position? For 40 years, I have been in the Minneapolis Public Schools. I've been in a part of the Minneapolis Park and Rec. I've been in a position of working as a player for the University of Minnesota football team. But I worked for the University of Minnesota in Duluth and in the Twin Cities, being an executive director in diversity and outreach. When it comes down to the DFL, I was the deputy chair of the Black Caucus for the whole Democratic National Committee. I've been on the DNC for almost 12 years before I left, after Barack left, when he made his move to the second term. I had to leave because I was a little bit burnt out. But now I'm ready, I'm in it to win it. I'm game. Thank you.
Question 1. Over the next few years, what would you do as a city council member to ensure public safety and help rebuild trust between the Minneapolis Police Department and the communities it serves?
This is perfect for me because this is what I do. And just like that old car commercial, or that lawyer, that's all I do. And I do it well. And my thing is that since I already told you that I work for the Minneapolis Public Schools, and then I work for, Park and Rec and the University of Minnesota, I have been in the trenches all of that time. The key thing is that we have to stop one thing, the drugs that's going downtown, that's killing us. The other thing is that we got to start to reach to our youth, because those are the ones that's breaking us left and right. We have to create programs that can last longer than 30 days. The other thing too is that we have to be in a position to increase the police. We got to get them back to 720 or 725 to that level. But the other thing too is that we need to learn how to grow our own. And when you start to grow your own, you got the community that's already there, and those kids, now adults, understand exactly why they're here. They're here to do one thing, to serve our community and to serve their communities too. That's how you build things one step at a time. Use it as a grassroots, but be in a position of making sure that you are persistent in saying those words, we are a team and we are a neighborhood as well.
Public safety is absolutely my #1 concern in the city council race, and I take this very seriously as a young woman who lives as a renter in the Stevens Square, Loring Heights neighborhood and experiences community safety as the top livability issue in our neighborhoods. My #1 concern is making sure that when you call 911 that you get a response, and that's not currently the case. I have called, the cops at Precinct 5 just recently having witnessed an accident, and they said, we just can't come. And that's unacceptable. So in order to meet the staffing charter in our Minneapolis charter to have the amount of officers required, we need to expand hiring pathways. And the most important way that I can be impactful on this is to push the city to implement the 30 by 30 decree that we signed, which is to have 30% of our police force be women by the year 2030. I did a ride-along with the Precinct 1 cops from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. during the late night shift and interfaced with a full male police staff. There was one woman working there who was a DID staff member, and she told me how she's been trying to join the police force for a year and has faced so many barriers to join the force. So I will work with the city to expand hiring pathways to meet that number so that you have a response from 911 when you need it.
Transforming the culture in our police department is essential. We need to transform the culture so we can hire the over 200 officers we're short right now. It's critical. We need these officers. Violent crime is at a terrible place in our community. There was recently a carjacking in this neighborhood, and it rattles people every single time, and it shouldn't be happening. We need a police force and a public safety department that can put an end to this. One reason Lisa Goodman, is that I've never said I'd defund or abolish the police department. In addition to this police department, we have a set of alternative responders like the Behavioral Crisis Response Team, which are social workers we send out on calls. This is important. Nearly 30% of the calls coming into our 911 center do not require an armed response. So sending a social worker, or maybe a social worker and a police officer, is the right thing to do. It doesn't escalate the problem. We also have our violence de-escalation people on the street at night. These teams are incredibly effective and wonderful. We have excellent neighborhood organizations in our city, some of whom have walking groups that patrol the streets at night and just walk around and are a presence. They're effective. What we shouldn't do is delay on the 3rd Precinct Police Station. We should be building one now. Thanks. I'll be a supportive voice on City Council for our police department.
Question 2. What can you do as a city council member about the proliferation of guns in our city, and what gun safety measures would you support?
Well, I've been talking a lot with the Moms Demand Action Group, which did declare me a gun sense candidate in this race as one of my endorsements and one of the groups that I talked to about a really important issue that impacts, the livability of our neighborhoods. I do wake up to gunshots several nights of the week, and it's unacceptable. But I will say that our police force is doing a really good job right now recovering guns off the street. So last week at the Security and Safety Summit downtown, our police chief, Brian O'Hara, reported that as of 2023, they have already recovered 900 guns. And this is really important work. That's why we need public safety officials who are able to de-escalate the situation and to remove guns and other weapons from the streets. I will also be a voice of listening to citizens' concerns with violences in our communities and making sure that they're reported. 311 service right now is ineffective. It's another one of those areas where we need to collect better data and to actually use that data to inform policy in our city, specifically around violence, around cases of disrepair in our communities, street lighting, other ways to prevent violence in our environments by instituting core constituent services. That's what the City Council can do on this issue.
I too was endorsed by Moms Demand as a gun safety candidate. I'm proud of that. I think that we both need the police and we need the prosecution on this problem. We see people, a lot of them juveniles, being arrested repeatedly and not being prosecuted. And it's really frustrating for the people of the city, and it's really frustrating for the police officers of our city who are working tirelessly, 200 officers down, to repeatedly arrest the same people. There's nothing City Council can do other than the same thing you can do, which is ask our county prosecutor to be more aggressive. However, the police department has done a great job of identifying cases that it can federalize. If it can take a gun safety case and make it into a federal case, they can take that to the federal, U.S. jurisdiction and not have to try and prosecute them in county court. I back a data-driven approach to this kind of problem. Operation Endeavor did a really good job this year of putting cops where they need to be at night. They did a really good job of anticipating where crime was going to occur by using data. And so in closing, I'll just say we need to really push the police department to operationalize quicker response times so they can get there and arrest people and take the guns off the streets.
I've been endorsed by the 21 Days of Peace and Mad Dads. They on the streets. For me, that's what we need to be. Because for me, the problem is it's the court system. We have to be in a position of making sure that these juveniles are in a position of not just being there, being in the court, and then next thing you know, get their hands slapped and being back in the streets. We need to have programs like Totem Town, that's not there no more, St. Joseph, no more. We need programs that will be in a position of changing the way that they think about life. These young men and young women and men thinking that they're only going to live for 21. They got to see that they got to have life, and they got young and they got long time to live. How can you be a man when you've never seen a man? How can you be a woman if you've never seen a woman? They got to be in a position of making sure that they understand exactly what they're doing. And this crime, when it comes down to dealing with juveniles and guns, they can stop that. And it's not just the police that needs to be a part of this. It's all of us. It's the village that we are talking about. It's the neighborhood that we need to talk about. From that, it's one step at a time. And with that, the only thing that we have is only 2 years, and that's it for this part of being a city council member. I want to be in a position to start number one at this time in dealing with those issues when it comes down to what? Public safety.
Question 3. How would you as a city council member increase the availability of affordable housing and provide for rent stabilization? Would you support rent control? Would you suggest other options?
Right now, I will say I don't know. I'm not going to be in a position of going to tell you to say yes or I'm going to say no, because there's too many things that's involved in this and so crucial because we haven't got it right yet. I mean, if you look at it, look what happened in St. Louis when they had Pruitt-Igoe. Look what you had when it comes down to Cabrini Green, okay? Now you come in here in Minneapolis and you got almost 5 things that you got to work with. One is you got to deal with the mental. Then you got to deal with single women headed household with children. Then you got to deal with veterans. Then you got to deal with senior citizens who's got their sons or their daughters' kids. You got all of that stuff mixed up into one. That's not enough. You got to be in a position of making sure that everybody is safe and they can feel safe and they know they're safe. But the other thing too is that you need to be in a position of having a summit. You need to have a committee, and from that, from different areas, from local, federal, and from the city, to make sure that they understand exactly what we are trying to do with this rental and with homelessness, and being in a position of making sure that once we got it, we'll use it. Because right now, we are in a position where right now the city council already cut and said, well, hey, we're going to cut single zones when it comes down to single housing. That's not enough. We got to be in a position, because one thing, they need to keep those single houses together. But the other thing is that they need to be in a position of knowing exactly what they need to do.
Well, I do not support a 3% rent control cap. The reason that I don't support it is because it's very costly and difficult to implement, as we're seeing play out in St. Paul right now. And there are a lot of other better ways that we can support renters and keep housing costs low. Rent control has the detrimental impact of stopping housing construction, specifically of affordable housing construction. But we do have many strong renter protections at the City of Minneapolis that are currently not being enforced. Some of those are around security deposit limits for renters. They're also about discrimination laws to protect renters. I would like to invest in fully funding the enforcement of these laws to protect renters, especially from predatory landlord behavior, which is all too ubiquitous in our city. So many renters throughout Ward 7, which 60% of Ward 7 is renters, have been sharing that information with me throughout this campaign. Other policies that I support to protect renters and their affordability is direct rental assistance to renters. This is something that comes through the state. It's very effective. I also support the continued supply of deeply affordable housing. That is housing that can be at 30% area median income to really help people, and I hope we'll get to this question in a bit, to help people that need housing that are currently living on the streets.
I'm opposed to rent control because it does not work. The problem is that rent control, as soon as it's imposed, the production of housing dries up or ceases, and housing ends up becoming scarcer, which means it's more valuable, which pushes rents up. Bloomberg recently wrote an article about Minneapolis and said that we have done a great job as a large American city of taming inflation. How? Creation of housing. That's how we've tamed inflation in our local economy. At the same time, we kept rent increases to 1% annually, naturally, without a law imposing a rent cap. If we impose a rent cap, let's say 3%, most landlords are going to take that 3% to protect themselves every year. If 1% is what we're doing naturally, and we impose a law limiting rents to be increased by 3% a year, and landlords take it, that hurts tenants. So if you need an example of what not to do, look east to St. Paul.
Question 4. What can the city of Minneapolis do to support small businesses? This was from Ward 7.
Not take away parking on Hennepin Avenue for a start. The whole Hennepin reconstruction plan was a big mistake. They came, they asked for our input, you'll remember, and they took our input down, and as far as I can tell, they put it in a notebook, they closed the notebook, they put it on a shelf, and they did what they were going to do. That's not the way city staff should work with the citizens of Minneapolis. They should come to us and ask the businesses along Hennepin Avenue about what they need, what they want. And yes, they need to temper those things with what the city needs to grow. So yes, we need transit. I want to provide transit for people, but I also want to preserve the infrastructure for people who aren't going to use transit so they can still use a car. We need to do it all, and we can do it all. But putting a bike path on Hennepin Avenue and taking out all the parking is going to be a real blow to Renata and to Nico's Tacos and Osmond Cleaners. They are a locally owned, minority-owned business that owns their own. They've owned that building and that cleaners for 30 years. They do all their processing on site in an environmentally friendly way, and they're going to be left with 2 or maybe 1 parking spots for people to come and pick up their dry cleaning. So, bad idea, Minneapolis. We can do better.
I'm sorry. It's really safety. I mean, the thing is that you can build all of this stuff, but if you still have the same people coming in there and wrecking your place up, you still got the same problem. The first thing that you need to come with is to build a safety area where you already know that that is going to be a place that people are going to be secured and be safe. Right now on Nicollet, you tell me any retail stores that's over there. There's only one. That's Target. That's Target. We need to get more people into that lineup. We need to get small businesses into that lineup. Why are they not going? Because people are stealing, shoplifting, and ripping off everything they did, and they're throwing out graffiti all over the area. Enough is enough. First thing that you need to look at is what? Safety.
I've been visiting with small business owners throughout Ward 7, throughout my campaign in Bryn Mawr, in downtown, and uptown, and it's quite shocking that many of them are not receiving any support from the city, whether that's financial or technical assistance. So we know with the Hennepin Avenue project that the city invested $1.2 million in transit planning and $0 in small business supports, which is absolutely unacceptable. They have faced so much in the last couple of years from the COVID pandemic to the social uprising in 2020 and escalated robberies and crimes. Small businesses throughout Ward 7 need our support. But I will be proactive in providing real solutions to businesses. My solutions to support businesses include providing shared parking facilities. So using private lots and converting them into shared lots so that all businesses can use them. Delivering financial and technical assistance to small business so that they can improve their storefronts, their facades, and have lighting, have electric vehicle charging, have new forms of attracting customers. That's the way of the future. And finally, I'd also like to mention that St. Paul is doing some innovative work around incentivizing new businesses to fill vacant storefronts. So I'd like to explore subsidizing the first month's rent free for new businesses to inspire new businesses to come into both uptown and downtown, which are our top commercial corridors.
Do you see the neighborhood associations?
Neighborhood associations are absolutely critical to Ward 7. In fact, the Downtown Neighborhood Association has been especially fascinating to me as downtown is a neighborhood of 50,000 people, 5,000 new residents since 2020. And so as new people move into our neighborhoods, neighborhood associations are the first point of contact and should be the first point of contact for them to feel welcome, for them to get integrated into civic engagement. You know, we have a ward of 30,000 people, and in 2021, only 10,000 people voted, so 30% voting rate, which is really unfortunate considering how much city council can do and how much local government can do to improve people's lives. And so I think neighborhood associations are extremely important for getting people engaged, for welcoming them, for providing solutions like supporting small businesses, you know, Lowry Hill Neighborhood Association potentially pooling resources to keep Lowry Hill meets there so they don't have to leave Hennepin Avenue. Those are some of the things that I would love to work with neighborhood associations on doing. I think the funding for neighborhood associations has been cut that the city made in recent years, and I think we can strategically place more of our partnership engagement funds from the city. Those are $45,000 grants, not huge, but I did help a neighborhood group access that fund just last year, and we can distribute more of those funds for strategic projects with neighborhood groups.
Thank you. Scott?
Great question. Recent Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association board member. I resigned to run for office, but I love neighborhood associations. I'm a realtor, and I've been involved in the DFL, as I mentioned at the top, a lot. So that confluence of real estate and politics, whenever I sell people a house in Minneapolis, I always make sure I connect them with their neighborhood association. It's like a welcome wagon plus plus. So when the mayor proposed a budget last cycle, not the recently approved, but the cycle before that, he had cut neighborhood association funding to the bone. And I gave testimony in front of city council to restore that, and it was restored due to an amendment made by Lisa Goodman, our predecessor, and I'm really grateful for that because, look, neighborhood associations glue people to neighborhoods. A lot of people don't see neighborhood associations as part of city government. They might not trust government, but they know their neighbors. And if people are rattled about living in Minneapolis, which they justifiably are, a lot of people talk about leaving, and that neighborhood association might be the glue that connects them to staying. So I think they're vital. They also do the walking groups at night in some cases, which are super effective and very inexpensive ways for the city to keep our streets safe. So I'm 100% a big fan of neighborhood associations.
Thank you. Ken?
I'm 100% for neighborhood associations because I believe in it and I know it works. The thing is that it does take a village to raise a child. You got to be in a position of making sure that you can stand up and do one thing only, and that's fight back. When it comes down to the crime, fight back. When it comes down to people, all those stuff, fight back. When somebody's breaking in your house, fight back. And how you do that is bring your community together. And this is what that is.
Thank you. This question will also go to you, Ken. How do you envision communicating with residents of Ward 7? Would you commit to attending neighborhood association meetings? Again, this was submitted by the neighborhood.
Well, there's three things that I've always been talking about all this time. That is the most crucial thing that you can ever do. I've been doing this for years. You want to know my secret? There you go. Here you go. One, I will listen. That's the most important thing. Number 2, I care. And number 3, I matter. You matter to me, and I hope if I begin in this position, you'll matter to me as well. And what I want to do is making sure that we have summits like we did in the 3rd, that we had those police officers, so the people and the police chiefs, so they can know exactly what's going on. The other thing is making sure that, hey, when you call, I will be answering that, not waiting for a voice message and saying my voice message is full and everything else. That will be there, and I will be there making sure that we have town halls, we have summits. We will just be in a group and going to these parks, going to the schools, making sure that you know that you got the right man for this job, and that right man is Ken Foxworth.
Thank you. Katie?
I want to take a second here to just comment on Scott's opening remarks, which were quite incendiary and ugly in my opinion. I do not want to be part of a city council that is promoting dysfunction and disunity. I want to be part of a city council that doesn't throw other members with different beliefs under the bus. So when it comes to communicating with constituents, I'm not going to be part of a culture that blames problems in our city on other members of our community or other city council members. I'm already in constant communication with the city council members, all 13 of them, as well as the mayor. And I believe in working constructively with them, building strong relationships with them, and communicating what you, the constituents of Ward 7, are telling me to them so that we can have shared solutions when we come to City Hall and stop fighting on the dais and stop using media and forums like this to try to divide our community. So that's one thing I'll promise you. The other thing is that I will be responsive, I will be transparent in my communications. I will answer the phone, I will answer emails, I will hold open office hours throughout Ward 7 in every neighborhood, rotating monthly so that everyone can come and share their vision with me and share their views. I will also be sure to translate my materials to make sure that everyone, no matter your background or your language, is able to participate in our local government. And yes, I'll go to neighborhood association meetings, which I already do and I love to do.
Thank you. Scott? And remember, we're holding our applause as much as we love our candidates.
I think it's fair for voters to understand the differences between candidates, and that's why I highlighted what I see as a difference in the candidates on this stage in this forum. Yes, of course I'll attend neighborhood association meetings. I did that when I lived in Sydney, and I was on the board when I lived in Bryn Mawr. And I think more than that, though, our predecessor set the standard for constituent services. Lisa Goodman's office, her staff, and herself have done a fantastic job of staying connected to the voters and the constituents and the stakeholders who aren't always voters, especially in Ward 7. We have the business community downtown that might live out of town, but they're still really important stakeholders. Lisa's office has done a really good job of staying in touch with people, and I have pledged to do the same, and I take that pledge seriously. I've been asked a bunch of times if I get elected if I'll continue lunch with Lisa, and I'll have to say that lunch with Scott doesn't have the same ring, so I don't know what I'll do about that, but I think it's a good program. She has a really good thing going, and people stay connected to our city government in all its forms via that forum. The other thing I'll say about being connected to the community is, as a white male, I'm aware of the fact that my lived experience isn't the same as everybody who lives in this ward. And I have made my commitment to always be in contact with BIPOC and underrepresented communities within Ward 7 to make sure that their voices are heard and listened to.
Thank you. Okay. Next question will start with you, Scott. This is from Community Power, and we've moved to climate and environmental equity and action plans. Minneapolis has a first-in-the-nation partnership with the city's 2 investor-owned utilities, CenterPoint and Xcel Energy. 2 city council members hold posts on this partnership board alongside the mayor. That's the background. The question is, if elected, what specific metrics would you, a city council member, like to see used to determine if the utilities are working towards the city's climate and equity goals in the partnership? How would you hold the utilities accountable?
So the city has franchise agreements with the major utilities, and they've made pledges to the city to cut emissions and to reduce energy usage by implementing conservation programs. Minneapolis recently passed an amazing climate equity plan, which is a set of goals that has put us on the path to be a world-leading city in fighting climate change. And the most basic pieces of that goal set are weatherization and insulation, which is a program that we've asked Centerpoint and Madagascar to sign on to help citizens of the city reduce their utility cost to below 4% of their income, which isn't the case in certain parts of our town, which are called the green zone, which are areas of town where racial, social, and economic injustices have traditionally been imposed on BIPOC communities. So we're trying to become a carbon-free city by 2050, which is a lofty goal. And through these franchise agreements, we're trying to impose that these goals on the utilities and ask them to continue to help us. And if they don't, the threat of privatizing our utilities is always there for us to use as a lever.
Thank you. Ken.
I mean, just look what happened, say about 2 weeks ago. I mean, you had a judge to deny the 2040, and then from that had to go back to the 2030 rules. For me right now, I'm not concentrating on this. I'm really not. My thing is I got 2 years. My 2 years is trying to make sure that we are safe so we can be in a position of having that to be opened up. For me, I'm not in a position where I want to be telling you something that I don't know and telling you something that I can't do at this time. Because what my concentration is making us safe.
Thank you. Katie?
So climate change is the crisis of my generation and for many generations coming after me. I have a deep wealth of knowledge in this subject, having designed a global climate program, having worked on the People's Climate and Equity Plan at the city that was passed unanimously this July with 2 years of advocacy in Lisa Goodman's office, collaboration with the Sustainability Department. So absolutely I want to sit on the Clean Energy Partnership and be at the table where Minneapolis and Xcel and Centerpoint are making decisions about our energy future. So I did attend the last Clean Energy Partnership meeting a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of funding coming in right now from the federal level from Biden's administration for climate. And it's really important that we capture those dollars in Minneapolis, that we can deliver on clean energy investments for our communities and prevent the worst impacts of climate change, which, as you know, are already impacting us with heat waves, with floods, with air pollution coming in from Canada. So a few ways that I'd like to hold Centerpoint and Xcel accountable to actually being good partners on the Clean Energy Partnership is one, holding Centerpoint accountable to not installing new gas infrastructure. We're not in a position to have any new gas infrastructure in our city. Secondly, Xcel pulled out of its agreement to build public electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Minneapolis with the Resilient Minneapolis project. So I'd like to be the person to say, hey, you agreed to this, you need to follow through. It's something that citizens of Minneapolis are really asking for.
Thank you very much. And again, Katie, this next one will go to you. What are the top 3 things Minneapolis can do to address climate change equitably?
So the top 3 things Minneapolis can do to address climate change equitably is to make sure that every building, whether it's a residential building or a commercial building, is transitioning to clean energy. I worked on the 100% bill that passed at the Minnesota State Legislature this year that will be mandating our utilities move to 100% clean energy by the year 2040. But it's really important that in Minneapolis that we give building owners and residents, especially renters, the opportunity to install that infrastructure in their homes. So I think communication is a big tool that we need to work on here, and education about electric systems that you can install in your home. When you're replacing your furnace, can you go to an electric heat pump instead? How do people who don't know a lot about HVAC systems do that in their buildings? I also think we need to work on distributed solar and rooftop solar throughout our communities so that people have power over their electricity generation, are not beholden to the utilities, the monopoly utilities in our city. And finally, resiliency. I mean, climate change is impacting us. It's going to change our public spaces. We need to be prepared for that. We need to be planting trees that will not die in 10 years because of a beetle. We need to be planting grass and native grasses that absorb carbon out of the air. We need to be setting up our stormwater drainage systems to be able to handle the capacity of new floods and increased precipitation. So these are all things that I will lead on at City Hall.
Thank you. Scott?
The least expensive way to reduce the energy burden for a resident is weatherization and insulation. It's the least expensive way we can help people reduce their energy costs to 4% of their income. I would love to start a program like the Metropolitan Airport Commission did years ago to abate sound, where we have a program that is grant-driven by the EPA, and that one was from the Transportation Committee, the MAC one, but where we are going to these green zones and saying to the property owners, we would like to insulate and weatherize your home, make it an opt-out program so landlords can't easily get out of it because they don't pay the utility bills so often. Number two, composting. We should be composting in commercial facilities, in multi-housing, and multi-condo buildings. Frequently, that's not the case, and when it is the case, it's because the residents of the building went out of their way to get it in their facility. Single-family homes and duplexes get it from the city. Commercial entities and multi-housing don't. And number three, electrification. Rooftop solar through grants, installation of heat pumps in homes, and other electrified assets to displace gas-burning utilities.
Thank you. Ken?
There's only one that I want to say. I think that really it makes sense to me before anything, and I think that for me, I have to say this. Eliminate the BERT. That generator, that recycle, that place that's by the Target Center, you gotta let that go. If you start doing that, then I will start campaigning on this because it's been killing people of color for years with the asthma, all of that stuff. And nobody's not strong enough to remove it. It is time. Now, since you got gentrification, now you got people saying, not in my backyard now. It should never been in the backyard in the first place. So for me, that's the first thing that I'm gonna say. As a matter of fact, that's the last one I'm gonna say because that's so important.
Okay, thank you. Ken, you're gonna get this question again. We've moved to city government. As I wanna add that last question was from Ward 7, as is the one coming up now. In November 2021, in the November 2021 election, the city charter was amended to an executive mayor legislative city council system. What letter grade would you give the city council on implementing its function? And what would you do to further implement this in the future? And again, Ken.
Right now, the function is disarray. I mean, one, you got a city council that got to learn how to understand the word strong mayor system, because it used to be a weak mayor system. Now you got the mayor who's in charge, and now you got the city council members who deals with policies. And that's the thing that they got to learn how to do now. Right now, that place is divided. That's why we run it, to change it. And so for me, to be in a position of knowing exactly that we deal with the policies or trying to make sure that we can create a change, try to make sure that, hey, the policy is right for us to make sure that the people who come to our city and who's living in our city will be safe.
Thank you. Katie.
The current city council the last couple years has been dysfunctional. I will say that. We are not seeing a lot of allyship on the council with the mayor, as well as negotiating and finding the new space for the city council now that we're under a strong mayor system. So I'd just like to say that my goal in good governance would be to create a legislative department at the city so that the city council can do its job. The city councilor's role will be different than the way that Lisa Goodman has led us for the last 25 years. It will be about partnership building a broad coalition, I'm proud to be endorsed by Representative Esther Agbaje in the State House and Hennepin County Commissioner and Board Chair Irene Fernando at the county. It's really important for our city council to have those intergovernmental relations in order to pass legislation at City Hall. And so a legislative department on the for the City Council would allow us to have policy staff that are skilled and able to craft policy so that we can have solutions on City Council. That's something that our City Council is still figuring out how to do under the strong mayor system. I'd also like to see us use our policy oversight control better on the City Council so that when we do pass a policy, we're tracking and monitoring to make sure that we're actually implementing it.
Thank you very much. Scott?
So I supported this charter amendment in 2021. I was comfortable with the strong mayor system. I come from a business background, and a structure of a chief executive with a legislative or supportive board is something I'm comfortable with. And frankly, in the old system, city department heads functionally had 14 bosses, 13 city councilors and the mayor. And that sounds like dysfunction at its worst. So I supported this charter amendment, and I still do. I think the essence of this question is, how will I work with other people on city council? I have a relationship with most of the people on city council. I've known many of them for quite a long time, and that includes people who are across a partisan, or like a ideological divide that would appear to be in front of us. I think by ascribing best intentions and by listening and by working collaboratively to really find solutions where we probably have goals that are the same, but we may have different ways of getting there. Maybe we can sit down and figure out where we have a common goal and find a different way to get there than either of us thought about. And then what would I do in the future? I think this is something Katie was probably just talking about, but I would like to establish a nonpartisan research unit that supports city council. So city council gets good, straight data with which to make legislative decisions.
Thank you very much. And Scott, you're going to take the next question. As a city council member, you are responsible to both your ward specifically and the city as a whole. How will you manage this, especially when priorities compete?
So this sort of picks up where we just left off. First of all, let me say this. A win for Ward 7 is a win for Minneapolis, and a win in another ward is a win for Ward 7. Because I really feel like all 13 city council people, although we each come from a particular ward and may have particular things that we want to see done for our ward, we serve at large. Because if our city enterprise succeed, all 13 wards succeed together. That's not always true, but I'd like it to be true more. And I really think that's the essence of what this job entails. In Uptown, Ward 10 has roughly 2/3 of Uptown, and Ward 7 has about 1/3 of it. We go to the Walker Library. That's our corner. And the rest of it's Ward 10. But if we can get more businesses in Uptown, it's a win for all of Minneapolis. And if I can work with Aisha Chugtai or whoever ends up being the Ward 10 representative, should I win, that's a win for everybody. And I don't need to take ownership of that. That can be the us working for all of us. That's just what this job is supposed to be. I want Minneapolis to be a fun, prosperous place, a safe place, a place known for having a cool culture and an inviting place for people to come and play and start businesses. We do that by working together. So that's my goal.
Thank you. Ken?
My goal is to make sure when I look at a crowd like this, that I see more people of color inside of the crowd, to be in a position that they can be hearing the same thing that y'all hear right now. That's the reason why I'm running. I think that's some of the reasons why some of the other city council members are running as well. But the most important thing that we want to do is to get it to a point where, even though what Scott was talking about, that we have the library, but then if you just go across the street, you got the bus loop. You see all that drugs that's over in that area? You see all the problems that are over there? That's part of us. And we have to be in a position of working together. Like I just said a long time ago, we are not divided, but it's time for us to be connected. when we have a connection with our own city of Minneapolis and making sure that the lead came from 7th, because we got everything that you need in 7. We got the arts, we got the sports, we got the education when it comes down to Dunwoody, sure, it's St. Thomas, Minneapolis Community College, everything is here. And what we have to do is to share it. But the other thing is that we want to make sure that the area is what? Safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the
sorry.
question?
Yes. Oh, repeat the question. Okay. As a city council member, you are responsible to both your ward specifically and the city as a whole. How will you manage this, especially when priorities compete?
Yeah, I think I kind of answered this in the last question, but having conversations with the other city council members, calling them up and saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing from my constituents, this is my approach on affordable housing, this is the legislation that I want to pass, do I have your support, and them feeling comfortable to come to me with the same information. But I'd also like to bring up another point here, which is that Minneapolis is a deeply inequitable city. And Ward 7 is also a deeply inequitable ward. And I think 2020 should serve as a wake-up call to many of us that we live in injustice, in racial and economic injustice. And so I'd like to bring a lot more people into that conversation, this era of truth-telling that we're in, where belonging is really important. And we all need to be part of that conversation. And so I think, you know, the Racial Justice and Belonging Department at the city, as well as the Truth and Reconciliation Work Group that's undergoing at the city, are providing us with policy recommendations about how to fix the injustices in our neighborhoods, how to release racial covenants from your housing deeds, how to be part of solutions to build diversity and to build equity in our neighborhoods. And I want to involve all of you in that conversation. And I think you all want to be part of that conversation as well.
Thank you. All right, this next question is going to go to Ken, and it's into transportation. The mayor recently vetoed, and this again is from Ward 7, the mayor recently vetoed a rideshare ordinance approved by the city council, and he suggested that more debate is needed before the city make a decision. The question is, what do you think about the rideshare issue? How can the city provide wage protection and pricing transparency for drivers without significantly increasing the price for riders?
That's a good question. I think that right now the problem that we have is that it's not just the riders. You got to be in a position making sure that you have the people who are driving comfortable and having these people on the bus and making sure that we have clean, efficient vehicles that's going to be coming in 2040. But the other thing too is trying to make sure that everything that we do is going to be in a position where it's got to not just be safe, but to be in a position of making sure that it can be clear and precise to a point where everything do not have to change, that we'd have to go to a court and get it rechanged again. I think that really my thing to have what he did was to veto it. I think it was the right thing to do, because from that, I don't want to be in a position of being like in St. Paul with that rental stuff, not having the accurate information that is necessary to be there when we make the serious decision on how we're going to make this place, and how we're going to make the area, safe and be in a position of having good traffic. You got to understand that Minneapolis is the #1 key component of this state. If we do not have this worked out, our whole state is going to be, like I said, a disarray.
Thank you. Katie.
I think rideshare, Uber, and Lyft are great. We all use them frequently. It's a great technological development that we have the opportunity to call a ride when we need it on our phones, no matter if it's the middle of the night or no matter where you are in the city. However, I do think that the mayor should not have vetoed that ordinance because I think it's really important to support workers. And Uber and Lyft drivers are making pennies on the dollar to what the corporate owners of Uber and Lyft in Silicon Valley are making. And this has been a problem for a decade, since the foundation of Uber and Lyft, that Uber and Lyft drivers have not been making adequate wages. They're also not able to keep their tips. And so I think right now we're in a workers' market, we're in a labor movement when workers need to be supported. And if we can't stand up to big corporations like that and support our own workers here in Minneapolis, then we should provide another proactive solution instead of just vetoing that ordinance. We should put out an RFP for a local rideshare company to start a service here in Minneapolis that's locally based, even a public rideshare program like some cities and countries are doing. So I will always, if I'm going to veto something on the city council, I will always provide an alternative, proactive solution to the problem that we're looking at with that policy.
Thank you. Scott?
The reason the mayor vetoed that ordinance was that it was rushed and unnecessary. The state government impaneled a task force who has deliverables on January 1st, so we can discuss this, and the state legislature, which is how this issue should be handled, is regionally or statewide. If Minneapolis imposes a wage ordinance on Uber and Lyft, if I take a ride from here to St. Paul, do they even have the technology to change that when we cross the river? How does that work? They didn't research that. They had a lot of questions unanswered when they rushed this ordinance through, in my estimation. I, of course, support workers. I do want them to make a living wage. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think that that seemed like a performative piece of ordinance that didn't need to be passed, and the mayor was right to veto it.
Thank you. We're going to move into kind of a potpourri right now, and the next question goes a little bit back to public safety, but it's also general. Should the third precinct be built? When and why? And that question goes first to Katie.
The city council did decide that they did not want the third precinct to be built on the land where it was burned down. And I think that's important, right? Like, that was a very tragic moment. It's very triggering for the people in that community. However, people in the third precinct deserve a third precinct. They deserve a police station that's in their community. Currently, the third precinct officers are operating out of some temporary conditions downtown. So that means they're not able to respond to calls. And like I said earlier in my initial answer on public safety, is that my number one priority is to make sure that when you call 911 that you get a response. It sounds basic, but it's actually not the case right now. And so for people living near the third precinct, they want a new precinct built that's in their community. But what they also want to know is what will be happening at that precinct, who will be operating out of it, what's the conduct of police officers. And that's all part of the consent decree and the reform of the police department that we are undergoing as a city right now. I do support the building of the third precinct at the Minnehaha location that's been proposed by the mayor.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, very much in alignment with that answer. I also think the 26th and Hiawatha location is the correct choice. The people who live in the third precinct told us that the original site where this precinct was burned down was impactful to them emotionally, and if they say so, then it's true. The Hiawatha and 26 location is going to cost $10 million more. That's not an insignificant amount of money. However, the location downtown that was proposed to co-locate the first and third precinct was going to be $200 million more, and that is more than an inconsequential amount of money. That's an insurmountable budget allocation that I could not support. Also, that was a temporary solution that was going to last some undetermined amount of time, between 10 years, and they didn't give a short time. It's 5 years, 2, they didn't say. So $200 million to create a temporary solution is a terrible idea. I think 26 in Hiawatha is a great location. Since I have a few seconds, I would love it if police stations included a community center. So kids were coming to the community center to be in community, but at the same time, they were going to be around cops. And cops could interface with kids, and we could start to enforce the notion that police are your friends, police are not to be feared. I think that's something that's done in other countries. I think it could save money, and it might have some real impact.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did it again.
And I got the mic too right here.
No, it's not about you. It's about me.
No, I'm just playing. So, when I look at that burning, I was kind of teed off because of George Floyd, the stuff. But, you know, my thing is that I'm just going to say it, you know, I'm just going to be truthful. Most of all that stuff, there was somebody else outside of this city who did all that damage. That was wrong. And so for me is that right now what we need to do is to figure out what we're going to do and make our center, that police station, even better. My suggestion, yes, you're right, Scott, you should have a little, you know, center there. But what I would like to have is I would like to have a police academy there. That police academy is going to be the most important thing because it's in the what? The hood. And so from that, you will have activities there, and you have people who are going to be in a position of being police officers there too. So they can see exactly who is in the community that they're going to serve. And then the other thing is that you're going to see those 5% that's always doing bad in our community, that they will know and just pinpoint over and over again. Yes, have that area in that spot, but increase it to a point where it can be an academy, not just a place where people can play.
Thank you very much. And forewarned, Ken, this one's going to you too. Addiction is killing people throughout the city and magnifying other social problems. A related problem is the lack of mental health services of all kinds, especially for young people. What will you do to increase mental health and addiction services so they can reach everyone needing them in a timely fashion?
Yes, that's the most deadliest thing that I see now. So, Tim, I see you over there. And, you know, I understand what he's trying to do. And I hope if he's get to that position, I want to be involved in it. Anybody understand what the word blue is? Blue. That's fentanyl. Those people are taking that stuff and they're walking like zombies. I work for Delta. I have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. And sometimes I take the light rail and I see these young people because you know what? Fentanyl, blue, they don't have no culture. It's everybody who's in there. And they're walking, they deadbeats and everything else. We got to be in a position of making that change. Now you got it right there at the First Banks, and then they're getting ready to build a big old fence around the stadium. That's a shame. But they need to be in a position of building something that we can save these young people not taking these pills. One thing that I know at this time, how do we do this? Just remember, we just bought a brand new stadium with the liquor tax. Is that correct? One of the stadiums was paid. Why not increase that liquor tax and just concentrate on safety? We already know I've got to do it quick. We already know we're in a position right now. If you see your phone bill, it says $250. Sure, but you see the other thing. God, please. Just one, if you don't mind. My thing is that you got your phone bill, and then when you look at it, you see all these things, you're like, I don't know what that is. Sure, but you still pay it anyway. So why not be in a position of having something that says safety, that you already know that that money is going to what? Treatment, police, education, rehabilitation. That's where that money is coming from, that liquor tax and some other places that I'll talk about later. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie.
So the opioid crisis really needs to be treated as the public health emergency that it is, and it's also related to many of the other issues that we see in our city, including homelessness and encampments. It's also related to traffic deaths. I mean, the 4 young women who were killed coming off of 35W by a speeding officer, or by a speeding man in a car, actually had pounds of fentanyl in his car. There's just way too much fentanyl in our communities right now. And I actually come from a family of social workers. My stepmom is a social worker. 2 of my sisters have degrees in social work. And so it's really important that we bring that perspective to this crisis. The reason that I talk about homelessness in this answer is that we really need to be pooling our resources with the county and with the state and stop finger pointing between whose problem this is, but actually come together on a multi-jurisdictional strategy to offer addiction and mental health services to people who are living in encampments, because it's unacceptable that people have to live outside and experience the trafficking and drug trafficking that happens in encampments. And if we pool our resources, we can really make an impact on this issue with evidence-based approaches. And I'd just like to mention that I do live next to a halfway house, and it's really encouraging to see people coming out of addiction in a positive way and getting back on their feet. And I think more of us being involved in that work and seeing those positive results would encourage us too.
Thank you. Scott?
We do have an opioid crisis in our country, a fentanyl crisis, and it is really driving the homelessness issue across our nation. Homelessness is a pervasive problem that faces every major city in our country and most cities in the world. And Minneapolis is probably getting a C+ in how we're facing this as compared to other major American cities, but we can't pat ourselves on the back for getting a C. The way we're doing it is we're partnering with organizations like Avivo and Aon, Common Bond, Simpson, Beacon Interfaith Housing, the list goes on, of private organizations that are working tirelessly to address homelessness. And in these facilities that we're building, and this year we're on track to build 60 new units of this kind of deeply affordable housing, which is a 100% increase over what we did last year. We include wraparound services like the trauma-informed mental health therapy that this question asks about, and includes drug and alcohol addiction treatment and so many other of the acutely needed therapies that people struggling in our nation need. We need to continue to support this by finding the federal and state money to fund these without putting the burden on the taxpayers of our city.
Thank you very much. One issue the legislature has left open-ended for the municipalities to weigh in on is cannabis smoking in outdoor public spaces. What is your stance on this issue, also from Ward 7? And that one goes to Scott.
So I'm glad we legalized cannabis. I think it's really good legislation. It does a lot of really good things. Most importantly, the incarceration of people of color, men of color predominantly, and the component of the law that expunges records for people with low-level drug offenses is great. I think that's a big step forward for our society. I do, however, think that when I travel to cities around the nation that have legalized pot, I smell it a lot and I don't love it. And most of the people I've talked to have said similar things. This isn't an issue that I'm taking personally. It's not my feelings that I want to legislate on. It's what I've heard from people. People do not want to smell pot smoke everywhere they go. You can smell it in cars when you're driving on the highway, the car in front of you. You can smell it in the park. You can smell it on people when they're in public places. So this is something that people should enjoy in their homes or in private places or in places that we deem as legal to enjoy pot. But I think that it should not be able to be used widespread in public.
Thank you. Ken?
I agree.
Okay. Well, then we can throw in another question. That's wonderful. Okay, and to you now, Katie.
Yeah, I actually was reminiscing the other day with, the days when I was growing up when you could still smoke cigarettes inside, which is absolutely wild to believe, especially on planes and in Perkins, the non-smoking and the smoking section. And something that I was talking to Senator Dibble about, I didn't know because I was, I guess, too young at the time, maybe 10 or 12, that he was behind that legislation to ban cigarette smoking indoors here in Minnesota. And so I think that is part of the answer that we need to have on cannabis too, is where is it allowed to smoke? Are you allowed to smoke in public places? And I would advocate us for taking, the position and the policy that St. Paul has enacted now to not allow smoking in public places so that people don't have to experience secondhand smoke. It's pretty much a basic public health concern. Yeah, it seems like we're all in agreement on that one for once.
All right, thank you very much. Because we have a little bit of extra time, I'm going to throw a lightning round in here, and it's a little bit of a question that can kind of be answered that way. And this is, I know. You think we're going to get struck down? Okay. People under 35 make up 55% of the city's population. What do you see as young people's role in decisions that impact our city, and how will you involve them? And you only get 30 seconds. Thinking on your feet. And that one is going to start with you, Ken.
Just remember, 2035, so all of us is going to be in our 70s and 80s. Highest population is close to 25-30%. That's going to be very high. The question is what those young teenagers, those young people is going to do for us. We got to figure that out. We in trouble.
Thank you very much. And Katie.
I think I can say without a doubt I'm the best position to lead on this issue. I am under 35, and it's really important that youth have a seat at the table moving forward with all the issues that we're facing as a city. And you know what? Young people are really crying out for help right now with the mental health that they've been facing in the last few years. I think young people have great ideas about how to activate our public spaces and how to activate our vacant storefronts as entrepreneurs, and I'd like to engage them in that capacity for our city.
Thank you very much. Scott.
Yeah, we need to include young people in everything we do, on committees, boards, integrate people of all ages and of all walks of life. Also, on that same topic, we need to be bringing in people from BIPOC communities and other underrepresented communities, and the GBLTQ community. We need to be diverse in how we listen and how we hear all of our communities within the community.
Okay, thank you very much. We now have time for one last question, and you will start with this one again, Scott. All right. What is working well in Minneapolis, and how would you build on it?
We have an amazing culture and arts component to our city. We are the state's leader in arts and culture, and that's one of the things we should be leaning on to revitalize our uptown and downtown, getting artists, performers involved in pop-ups, in temporary things. Downtown used to be the area we focused on businesses. We need to focus on events downtown to get people to come visit downtown. And with our arts and culture community, we have a built-in advantage. Is this a 30-second answer?
No, you got your whole minute
I was
and a
going for
half.
30 seconds.
I'm sorry.
We have a new department in the Minneapolis government called Arts and Culture, and there's a guy who's the director of it named Ben Johnson, and I've met with Ben a few times, and he's amazing. He's full of ideas. I mean, seriously, it's like rapid fire ideas from this guy. And what he wants to do is he wants to create a arts incubator zone on Harmon Avenue, which the mayor recently designated, which is great. So we're going to start to see some things happen there with our arts community. And he also wants to create a grant program that would permanently fund arts in our community so we can start to reassert our leadership in that area within our state and within the nation.
Thank you very much. Ken.
I wish I had the pleasure to be in a position of meeting these city council members and these other community people, because every time I try to call to set up a meeting, they never call me back. It hurts. I got more experience than anybody in this table. They already know. But I never get a phone call back, and it hurts me so much. And so for me to talk about, innovation and all of that stuff, call me back. Let me know, what's going on. One thing that I see all the time that we have is the arts, but nobody's not talking about the Twins because they lost. But we have sports. We need to increase the park and rec, bring in new facilities to bring in revenue. We got everything that we need, but we need one thing that is so important. And I've been talking about that all day. And that is what? Safety.
Okay. Thank Thank you. And Katie?
I think one thing that our city has going well right now is a sense of optimism. The last few years have been very hard, and throughout my campaign, I've spoken to 15,000 people throughout Ward 7 already, door knocking 4 days a week and reaching out with phone banks, hosting meet and greets, and people actually are starting to feel positive about the future of Minneapolis. So I think there's a lot of ideas on the table about how to revitalize downtown, how to revitalize uptown, and absolutely I think arts and culture should be at the forefront of that. We have such a powerful theater community here. We have a great contemporary art scene. We have a lot of grassroots arts advocacy organizations that want to put on events. I also think that another positive thing about Minneapolis is how many people here really care about sustainability and environmental sustainability. We could be the most sustainable city in the country if we invested in the environmental solutions that people want in their communities, the parks that we have. This is really important for our neighborhoods, that we have greenery. And not all communities across Minneapolis have that privilege to have such strong, beautiful lakes and beautiful parks like Kenwood Park. So I think arts and environment are two of our top selling points for attracting more people to live in Minneapolis, and we will have a growing residential population in the upcoming years.
Thank you very much. We are doing so well. I'm throwing in another lightning round. 30 seconds. And this one will start with Katie. Do you support the city doing an environmental impact study on the 2040 plan? Why or why not? 30 seconds.
Well, we don't have a choice. With ongoing litigation, that is what the groups that have filed a suit against the city of Minneapolis are requiring. I work in environmental law, like I said earlier, and so environmental impact studies are really important to do. And I would also like to see the city's attorney's office at Minneapolis be stronger and be able to actually clarify for housing developers and businesses what is legal under the current plan right now, which elements of the 2040 plan are upheld or not.
All right, thank you. Scott?
The answer is yes. I think the ruling to halt the implementation of 2040 is well guided. And I'm pleased that we have a chance to think about it again, because the Met Council has downgraded their population projections for our area to 9% by 2040. I think the 2040 plan had the right goals and the wrong implementation. It didn't take into account neighborhoods. It didn't take into account neighborhood character.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ken?
I said that 15 minutes ago, about 2030, 2040. So from that now, it's time for us to be in a position of looking at it, bringing a summit, committees, making sure that everything that we do right now is looking at that 2040 plan. I agree with it, but it needs to be touched up.
Thank you very much. We now have up to 1 minute. Each candidate now has up to 1 minute for your closing statement. And we're going to start with you, Ken.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. So I'm going to tell you this story, and then after that, I hope I have enough time to do it. There was this man, that wise man, always was wise, that went to this hill. And then next thing you know, there was two dudes who always thought that he was smarter than the wise dude. And so the next thing you know, they said, and they saw this bird that was in a cage. And next thing you know, the young man said, I'm going to get this bird. Next thing you know, he said, if the wise man says that the bird is dead, I'm going to set it free. If the wise man says that it's alive, I'm going to crush it. So they went to the wise man. They said, wise man, is this bird dead or is it alive? Wise man said, I'm sorry, son, but it's in your hands. What I'm trying to say to you right now, it's in your hands. Everything that we have talked about, my issues is dealing with safety, is in your what? It's in your hands. You're in a position that you really want to stop crime, then stand up, get up, pray up, dress up, think up. And if you can't do none of that, it's about time for you to shut up.
Thank you. Katie?
Well, I'm here tonight because of many community members in Ward 7 who asked me to step up and to run with this open seat on City Council for the first time in 25 years. So I was really glad to share my vision with you tonight and to answer your questions and hopefully earn your vote. I'm so proud of the campaign that I've built. It's truly grassroots. We have 700 contributors to my campaign with small dollar contributions. That's incredible. We have hundreds of volunteers of all races, of all backgrounds, of all age groups who are out here door knocking and getting people engaged in this election. I'm really proud of my team. I'm proud of our vision for a safe, welcoming, vibrant Ward 7. And I'd like to invite all of you to be part of that coalition with environmental groups, with women's groups, with advocacy groups, and we'll be having a fun community event in Loring Park the weekend of Halloween, so I invite you to come there and to celebrate our community. And hopefully you'll make a plan to vote November 7th.
Thank you very much. Scott?
Thank you for being here. I hope you felt this evening was a good use of your time and you've gotten to know us as candidates. I'm proud of the campaign we're running. We started in January, and at that time, November 7th seemed very distant, and it's 26 days away, which seems very quick. So, perspective. I want to thank you for being civically engaged in our city. Your engagement is what gives me faith that Minneapolis can do what we need to do. I think we can do this as a team. Part of my team are the endorsements I've been fortunate to earn. Minneapolis Firefighters, Local 82, the Regional Council of Carpenters, AFSCME, which is our city, county, and municipal employees, the operating engineers, Lisa Goodman, Tom Hoke, and Meg Forney, who was here earlier, our park board president, have all said they feel like I'm the person that they feel best qualified to take the reins of Ward 7 and lead you to new prosperity in our city. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. And now? On behalf of all the co-sponsors, I thank you candidates for stepping up and being part of the democratic process by running for office and being willing to serve our community. We thank you all very much. I also really want to thank this audience for showing up on a night when you had the option of streaming, because it's really a big deal to show up for the candidates. So I really thank you for coming on this cloudy night. We hope the forum has helped voters make an informed decision, this and the one in September. Many thanks to MCN6 for recording this forum and to Lake of the Isles Church for providing space. The studio and video recording of this forum will be available unedited for viewing on the League of Women Voters Minneapolis website, lwvmpls.org. Recordings may not be edited by the candidates or the public or used for partisan purposes. The League also researches issues important to our members and the health of our communities. If you're interested in finding out more about what we do and how you can make a difference, please again visit our website and consider joining us as a member or volunteer. You can find more nonpartisan information about candidates and about voting at another League website, Vote 411. Information on voting and registration can also be found on the Minnesota Secretary of State website, mnvotes.gov. And remember, Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. Early voting began September 22nd and continues through November 6th. Please vote. Your voice matters, and we thank you.